Hi there. In a world where there is a gradual decline in the quality and standards of leadership, in a world where the very fiber of our institutions and leadership are being crippled with moral decadence and corruption, it's only right that we look up to the next generation to salvage the situation. And when one stands up to pick up the mantle of leadership, it's also right that we put the person under the bright lights to know what they are made of, their vision, their mission for the Ghanaian students. Up next on Tales to Six is a young man born to Mr. Kweku Opoku and Miss Dora Osei Poku. The young man who had a senior high school education at Swansea Senior High School, where he was the boys prefect. He then proceeded to KNUST to study political studies, where he was vice president for the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. He topped up as the SRC vice president at Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. He proceeded to get a Master of Arts degree in public administration, and he is currently studying law at KNUST. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have AGRIPAH Opoku. Thanks for honoring our invitation. This was so fast. No long protocols. Immediately I texted you. It seems you are very much accessible, and I like how you communicate. I don't know if it's a persona you are putting up for politics or that is how you are exactly.
Well, thank you very much. But I think that for people who have known me for some time would attest to the fact that this is just me. I have always said that anything about politics should not really be different from what our lives have been. I do not ascribe to the conversations that has to do with, okay, so this is a political talk, this is politics, let this go and all of that. My appreciation is the fact that politics is what we live every day. In the words of Aristotle, who says by nature we are political animal. And so whatever you do to anybody on the field of politics actually translates into the reality, what we are actually living, or how we are actually living. So for me, I do not live double standards. Okay. It is just what I am. I'm not able to pretend. And again, I feel that when you would have to pretend, just to woo people or to just win political power, it won't be long when you'll be exposed. Positions and all of these things are quite transient and only but timelines. And so for me, there's present that anybody who would want to get into politics will be as much as possible real to people. So this is just me. People have tested me in all my roles. I mean, from my leadership in SHS, leadership in KNUST, for my college, SRC level, assembly member, first term, second term, and all of these things. People have said, so okay, let me say this to you. I remember one time I was ahead of some people, a group of people, and they were having conversations. So I would say that I eavesdropped into a conversation, and the guy said, but this AGRIPAH, say pay abano, say no tia boko sa, o say dia bani we so, o say share, o say yes, I senior boko sa, and I laughed. But then the point is that I do not see why I would need to posit myself in a certain way, and then I get what I think I needed to get, and then I change all of a sudden. You should also appreciate that the very people whom you think you deceived to be there could easily also withdraw their legitimacy from you. And that's for true. Me, it is worrying. So you need to, as much as possible, be real with people. So this is just me.
Oh, that is true. You remind me so much of YB, Yadom Wachimano. Anytime you text YB, morning, afternoon, evening. Even before he was Nook's president, he'll pick up your call, reply your text.
Yeah.
Like every time, I'm like, how does he do it?
Yeah.
So is this a testament to how you are going to run your administration? Because people get it and you notice that you want to reach your next president and it's so cumbersome. You have to follow so many protocols before you reach your next president. Is this how you would want to run your administration if you are voted into power?
Well, I would want to, as much as possible, be accessible. Is one of the things for me that has made me successful, even as a young assembly member. Actually, in my first time, I was the youngest assembly member in the whole of Kumasi Metropolis. And I would say that proud to me being elected, a lot of people doubted my competence, is what I bring to the table, my experience and all of that. All of these things were questioned. However, when I was given the opportunity to serve, people realized that in fact we would have done ourselves a great disservice if we had not given this young man the chance. And primarily, I think that I have been successful not because I'm a position or a repository of knowledge, but I think that it has been by the coordination of other people and the contribution of other people. So, for instance, I have tried as much as possible to be a responsive leader. So you would have people call you honorable. So I could show you how I've saved some people's names. This is quite funny. I would save a woman who called and alerted me on potholes, and that is to say that until you are accessible, people are not able to, report issues to you. So a woman calls me, says, the honorable, people were talking and making complaints about some potholes on this road. As soon as possible, when I got the report, I needed to work on it. It could be that, of course, I've lost sight on that. But by the fact that somebody called me and I responded to it, I now am not in oblivion. I am privy to the issue and I'm able to address it. And so I would say that being responsive as a leader is one of the tenets that seemingly would make you successful, administratively. I've had people call me honorable, street light is not functioning and all of that. And by you answering their calls and you providing resolutions to their very problems, that also, gets you to be a good leader and also contribute to the metrics of your performance as a leader. And so this is how we are going to run the next administration. I have always had qualms or issues with how people would need to institute certain bureaucratic processes, especially when people would want to get to their leaders. It is just a call away. I don't see why you need to go through
So many
certain
protocols.
people before you get to the president. For me, it is worrying because some of the issues are quite urgent, and you must understand that. Of course, these are institutional leaders. Then these institutions are also part of the very blocks that form the union, and so if you would have to get them to go through several rudimental processes to get to you, then it is wrong. Then you are not going to be responsive to their issues. You cannot sit at the secretariat and be doing one thing while the very issues also that confronts the people also set somewhere. You are able to coordinate, align, tailor policies to addressing those issues once you are very responsive to the people. So trust me, we are going to run a grassroots system where, of course, you don't need to go through several processes. Of course, you have other executives. If you are going to get the Secretary for Education, call him. Once the Secretary of the Education gets to hear it, the President gets to hear it, or any other executive gets to hear it. So we are going to break the chain of bureaucracies when it comes to being responsive to the very plight that affects Ghanaian students.
I think that's very clear and that's very thorough. And with what you were saying, Elon Musk also employs the same or similar tactic. He believes, okay, there are hierarchies, but even if you are the bottom and the problem is got to do, or you have to, let's say, report to the secretary before it gets to the president, but if you have a problem or you've noticed a problem that the president can solve, you don't go through to the secretary, you just go through to the president to solve it faster. And I think Donald Trump, also being a businessman, has acknowledged that and has said that he'll definitely add them to his administration.
Certainly.
So for the purpose of this interview,
Yes.
how do I address you?
Oh, well, Agrippa. I have always, preferred to be called Agrippa.
Okay.
I mean, regardless of these titles and all of that, I do not think that actually has effect on you or it makes you anything. Well, if you have been addressed honorably or you have been addressed honorable, it is not to say it is by inferment. It is the fact that you need to live an honorable life to merit it. It is not just the title. So for me, I'm okay. You could just address me by Agrippa.
Agrippa. But
Yeah.
Agrippa, what is the origin of Agrippa? Is it a Bible term? Because I mentioned it to someone as like, is it Hebrew or so he mentioned one of the Bible names and I was like, where does this name like originate?
Okay,
What's the origin?
so actually it's a biblical name.
Okay.
Acts chapter 26 verse 1.
Okay.
You could also read from chapter 22, 23, 24, 5.
Hey, you know your Bible.
Yes, then you would appreciate the whole story of Agrippa. Actually, he was a very democratic king. So you realize when Paul had encountered Christ on his way to Damascus, and to an extent, the people now felt that because remember, he had gone to take a letter to go and prosecute Christians or those who were propagating the message of Christ. So when he had had an encounter, now for the person who was going to prosecute them, now has become a chief advocate for the same Christ. And so they felt that he is blaspheming, as of then the Judaism and all of those things. And so what happened was that Paul was arrested, and for a while he had not been tried. So habeas corpus has been breached here, where he was supposed to be tried within 48 hours and all of that. So that had been breached. And so you have King Agrippa and Bernice as a visiting king to the province of King Festus and that of Felix. So King Agrippa gets there and calls the case of Paul. Now Paul says, so now King Agrippa gives Paul the opportunity to speak for himself. So you read Acts chapter 26 verse 1 and the first assertion is, oh, thank you, King Agrippa, for giving me the opportunity to today express myself or to make a case for myself. And so for me, that is an expression of a democratic leader, and perhaps it has an effect on me.
Okay. So that is also tall. That is very understandable. You've made me know just now that you understand your Bible. I don't know if you are from a Christian home. So who is Agrippa, and what has inspired you to take up leadership positions?
Okay, so Agrippa is a young man who finds fulfillment in solving the issues of humanity. Personally, I've had the opportunity to explore, other things or things that could inure to my personal benefits. However, I've to an extent obliterated most of these opportunities and resorted to, having or taking a venture, that is beneficial to a larger group of people.
Yeah.
And that accounts for my interest in leadership, because I believe that, yes, of course, as individual I could make impact, but then of course when you are given the opportunity to serve, because service comes with systems, it affords you the opportunity to serve in much bigger and make much bigger impact. So for instance, if in my capacity as Agrippa I could affect, say, 10 people, I believe that if I get an opportunity to serve in a particular office, that has systems in place, has funds, resources, to discharge your duties, it affords me the opportunity to affect 100 or even 1,000 people. And so, well, Agrippa basically is just a young man who is always looking for that opportunity to impact humanity. And for me, being able to impact humanity or being able to resolve the issues that confront people gives me that fulfillment, and it makes me feel that I'm very successful. But it's not what I gain for myself, but it is what I'm able to do for people. And that is the whole persona of Agrippa.
Okay. From how you talk and how you speak, you are soft spoken. I don't know, but you also, I feel through how you communicate, you are articulate and humble. Is it as a result of the love you get from home, or some basic training from your parents. That's what has made you who you are, like the whole
Okay,
person.
so my mother, Efia Pokia, would always say, "Kwabna kaya busan kontonchi ofrim."
Okay.
Basically, I also affirm my character and my approach to issues and that of humanity um, on some biblical principles. You know, the Bible says pride goes before the fall, and God gives more grace to the humble, and He
Sure.
resists the proud. In the book of James, chapter 5, again, the Bible asserts that now I charge you to wear the garment of humility. It tells us about the intentionality of humility, and of course also expound to us further how pride and arrogance, haughtiness could be subtle and creeping. And so for me, I put a lot of premium and importance on humility. I've always said I'm a humility enthusiast, and I don't pretend about that. For me, I love humility. It is beautiful. You know, I do not see the gains in pride. I do not see the gains in being haughty or arrogant. And I believe that for people who are meek or who are humble, they are able to care for people genuinely, and they are able to be successful because, of course, um, until you are humble, you do not even accept corrections. You think you're always better. You think nobody can rectify your wrongs and all of that. Man, it is very dangerous and detrimental to our growth as a people. So for me, it is just what I am, and I love it. I
Okay.
love it, and I have a natural admiration for people who are humble. I think that in my engagement as Nook's presidential aspirant and subsequently a Nook's presidential candidate, I have highlighted in almost all the speeches I've delivered across, and enumerated the importance of humility to student leaders across. And for me, I think it is the only bait that would afford us to be successful, because of course we are on a learning journey, but until of course you consider humility, you are headed doom, or probably you are headed a dungeon.
Okay, so looking at the vast number of people you are going to spearhead or man the affairs of students when you are being voted into power, there are certain people who are very, very, very radical. You have students who are very radical.
Yeah.
So if you go in with a soft-spoken approach, it might not work. So how do you tend to marry these
Okay,
events?
so for people who have encountered me,
Yeah.
and have worked closely with me, would clearly and appreciate the Agrippa personality. That I'm very firm. I remember when I was contesting for a school prefect, I clearly remember one of my tutors said, "Jube, Agrippa, can you do this? You are very calm and too humble. And how you want to control these people?" But then I have always asserted that um, it is a matter of principles. It is not a matter of being radical or too pushy. I think it is principles. I am very resolute and strong when it comes to my principles. When I make a decision and I know that of course this is the right decision, it is not as though I am unbent. But then of course once I consider and I come to terms with the fact that of course this is near to the benefit of a greater number of people, best believe I am very firm on that, and it has aided me. I mean, serving as a community leader, I mean, this being my second term, it should tell you that if you are not firm, how are you going to be handling those issues? I'm very firm, except to say that regardless of you being firm, it does not call for you being radical or too pushy or anything of a sort. I mean, you could keep your composure, stick to your principles, ideals, and tenets, and you're able to deliver.
Okay, so with the little background search I've made, I noticed that you had your senior high school education in Kumasi, no, in Ashanti region,
Yes, please.
and you went to Tuasi Senior High School.
Yes, please.
Can you run me through your days in Tuasi Senior High School through to becoming a school prefect? How was it like in Tuasi Senior High School?
Okay, so it was a great, um ride. in tours. And I have always thanked God. You know, the Bible says the steps of a righteous man is ordered by the Lord. Personally, when my BZ result came and I looked at my results, it was never suggestive to me I was going to go to tours, because I don't remember selecting the school. I so much don't remember. Yes, but then it happened that that is the school I got. I had never been there, I had not heard of it and all of that.
What year is this?
We are talking about 2008.
Oh, okay.
Yes. I mean, however, like I asserted earlier, that the steps of a righteous man is ordered by the Lord. I think God took me to tours to just go and train me and to make me the person that I am.
Yeah.
When I got there, by the grace of God, and I say this solely to the credence of God, that I met very good people. I met Asel, I met Didi, who was my assistant school prefect. Asel was the discipline prefect. I met people who were quite religious and also very intelligent academically. And so you need to, you know, stay in your books to meet these characters. And it instilled in me enormous, you know, trends of discipline. And subsequently, when mantle of leadership was to, you know, transition to the new generation, a lot I realized a lot of my colleagues by default, you know, started calling me boy sir, you know,
Okay.
boys prefect and all of that. And that actually stemmed, you know, my enthusiasm in contesting for the school prefectship. And when I got the opportunity to lead, I would say, you know, having a lot of presentations, addressing your people during assembly and all of that, you know, contributed enormously to shaping my confidence in, you know, speaking to a larger number of people. It was during the time when we had a program called Success Retreat.
Okay.
And so Success Retreat, I think it's a 3 day something, and so you would have people come from various places, speakers, you know, resource persons to speak to you. So one of these events had some old students, one I clearly remember, called the Dusipoku, came to address us, and in the address he made a statement about KNUST and said that we had a certain association in KNUST, and that KNUST was open for everyone to be there. So I didn't know. I thought, you know, tertiary is for some special people. You know, sometimes when you are growing and you don't have a lot of appreciation for some events, your thinking, you know, is quite different.
Yeah.
And so Dusipoku made that statement, and it just jumped into my spirit like that. And I made a statement. I said, okay, so it is for everyone. And then right after school, I'm going there. And that is the very year when I completed. I got a waiting form. So I didn't
For
have to
KUST?
wait. Yes, I didn't have to wait for 1 year
Yeah.
before I went to school. I went to school the same year because I had passed all my papers and all of that, so I could enter the university. And yes,
So,
that is how.
well, what I'm getting, so that means you haven't been like what we call the typical bad boy, where you had like a character that everyone could, oh, this boy, you were never part of.
Oh, no, not at all. I mean, in tours, I served as you know, the SRC, local SRC president.
Okay.
By default, if you are the boys prefect or the head prefect. And I served also as Spencer General Secretary, and also served as SU Financial Secretary and Deputy Assistant Choir Director.
Hey.
Yes. So you see, all these bodies are disciplinary bodies that
Yeah.
shapes you, you know. So yes, I haven't been too obstinate a person, I mean, growing up, and that is why in my earlier assertion I was very categorical by saying that the steps of a righteous man is ordered by the Lord. So I believe that people God led me to meet, you know, in my first year, significantly contributed to my makeup or what I would become. And I have always, you know, given reverence and credence to God for, you know, blessing me with all those people.
That's right. Truly, that is what King Agrippa, an embodiment of a king, Agrippa. So, I understand that ARSRC, that's the Ashanti Regional Student Representative Council, was also there. Were you part of the ARSRC at the time?
Yes, yes, yes. I was. I mean, I took strong interest in attending activities. For me, I don't remember during my leadership was ever omitting any program ARSRC
Okay.
organized. We made sure that we partook in all the events, and I mean it's also has played a very key role in shaping us, and it's where we've had our training.
Okay.
You know, those times you come and you meet lawyer Osborne rattling, you meet senior Osborne being argumentative,
Yeah.
Senior Manaf,
Manaf,
senior Amankwa, you
yeah.
know, Chairman Amankwa. I mean, the likes of Kizito, those times they were coming,
Yeah.
being very controversial,
Yeah.
you know, and stemming very intellectual arguments and all of that, debating on issues. You know, those were the times you would find the likes of Michelle, myself, Samuel Mwapunkusi, and a lot of these people. But those times we would sit at the back and enjoy the debates. I mean, I don't know, lawyer Osborne, for instance, could argue for any case. Senior Papa P,
Yeah, Papa P.
and Atapoku, senior Atapoku,
Yeah.
you know, spark a lot of controversies. Regardless of the issues, they're able to argue from various points, regardless. I mean, whether it's positive or negative, they could just have flips and turns of events. They could argue for and against. And it was so admirable. So growing up, of course, you had all these people to learn from. You sit back, you look at their lines of argument, they are grooming you, training you, and all of that. And for me, they have been very modest people, and trust me, they've set very great standards for all of us to follow. And we see them even until now, they are doing so well. You see the lives of Manav, Senior Tapuku all over. People are being inspired by all the things they are doing. But these are people who are still very modest. You don't see them being prideful and all of that. And like I have said, it significantly has shaped us, you know, because we've had modicums to at least, you know, monitor or to follow, you know, to become what we are. So we are not what we are out of a vacuum, that indeed we didn't have to follow certain men, or we didn't have to get certain mentors and people to look up to. It has been by the, you know, great contributions of these great men and women. Of course, we had, you know, other women who were also part of it, you know, part of this whole process, and it's just what has shaped us.
So through your sessions, you admit that it's had ARSRC has had like a great impact on you.
A great impact.
Okay, so were you like a regional executive, or what at the time?
Okay, so I don't know. I think I contested for Zone 1 president. Yes. But then you know, it's an audio. It's an audio, and so I think that you realize that during the Nooks vetting, I was the last person to be vetted.
Yeah.
But this time I stayed up. I never blinked an eye.
Yeah.
And it is because I've had an experience during ARSRC days. Those times Sahindrin.
Okay.
Sahindrin will call, and one vetting is taking almost 2 hours or 3 hours, and so aspirant would have to, you know, sometimes you're young, you sleep and all of that. So I remember when it was time for my vetting, when I was fast asleep, and Kizito senior Kwabna Kizito actually came to call me, and I was sleepy. I went to sit there, and I didn't even know what I was doing, because I was sleepy. Like, I was just seated there, and I didn't know what I was doing. Okay. So yes, of course, that actually altered, you know, my ambition to becoming. But of course, as of the time, I had great potentials, and people were highly expectant of me. But because of, you know, this audio that I'm talking about, it to an extent extricated it, let's put it that way. and yes, we took great lessons from it.
Sure.
We took great lessons from it. So yes.
Okay, so then how I know after serving as executives, they have this association of past executives
Yeah.
that they have as an
Yeah.
like an association for
Yeah.
past executives and
Yeah.
coordinators.
Yeah.
So how did you become a part of the past executives association?
Yes. So by default, I had served on some, I think, some
Committees,
committees,
yeah.
yes. And again, you also have that leverage once you have been a past executive
Yeah.
to be part of APEC. But then of course it has to go through a constitutional requirement, that is
Yeah.
ratification.
Ratification.
And so we're ratified. I think I think it is the same year myself and Wakukusi,
All of them.
Michelle, who is currently the chairperson of the association. Yes, and some other people, yeah, Macaslan and all of those people, we all were ratified during the same year. I
Okay.
mean, it was a very tough year, very competitive year.
Well, that speaks a lot about ARSRC. I've also noticed that 3 successive presidents have come from this same association. YB, Dennis, the current president and incumbent, KOD.
Yeah.
And so it speaks that, this embodiment of an association are serial winners because they've laid the grounds, prepared people, and now they are taking over. In this election too, there are at least 3 people running for the same position from the same association. I don't know how you guys are going to go about it, but before then, I would want to ask you this question. You were part of last year's elections.
Yes, please.
So how did you drop out of the election?
Okay, so last year we had to look at an ambiguous constitutional clause, that had not had yet an interpretation.
Okay.
And so to avoid, any issues along the journey, we needed to seek for judicial interpretation of it. Unfortunately, the adjudication of same came quite late.
Yeah.
Then again, one of the things that we also had to consider is that I realized that myself, KOD, and to some extent, I think Clinton, I'm told
BBC.
Clinton too is part of EPEC.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's part of he's part of it.
Yeah, Prempeh. Yeah. So I realized that we were coming from the same constituency. So you look at it, particularly myself and the incumbent president, Master Chemi Opon Daniel. You realize that we are all coming from KNOST, coming from APEC, and of course another blog that of course I may not mention. So I realized that no, this has become a family thing, and if indeed you all have had the same upbringing, then of course you should believe in the ambitions of some people and also believe in their competence. Know that of course you are not the only person who could deliver. So let's create that room. Let's create that leverage, that gives them the upper hand or that opportunity to be able to win the election and give good leadership or governance to Ghanaian people or Ghanaian students specifically. So for me, I made considerations around some of these events, coupled with the constitutional provision that was, as of the time, quite ambiguous, that had not been interpreted yet until now. I mean, now it has had clarity, but then of course I had to really look at some of those provisions. So that's ultimately contributed to me having to reconsider my position to run in last year.
Okay. So I've lost my voice. Okay, it'll be good. So it's not that you loved KOD so much or you are afraid of KOD so much. That is why you stepped down. You conceded and stepped down.
Oh, I mean, it's a competition,
Okay.
and of course, for me, I've always said that politics is about conflict and cooperation. And the conflict part of politics is not conflict of the muscles, conflict of sophisticated weapons, or conflict of weapons of mass distractions, or conflict of machete. It is conflict of issues and conflict of ideas, ideologies, principles, tenets, direction. So basically, those were the terms that we're going to run the election on. I have done that before. I had a track record when it comes to leadership. I think that I've provided enough exoneration when it comes to the competencies of my leadership.
Yeah.
So yes, of course, that never was in question. It never had to do with me being afraid of Master Tremi upon Daniel, or what again
You
did you
loving
say?
him so much, that is why you
That,
stepped down from.
well, loving him so much. Yes, of course, I do love him, and of course
No
that we
homo,
could.
no homo, no
Yes,
homo.
yes, yes. I do love him so much, and we could provide some consideration to that, because, of course, I had to put the issues in perspective, like I enumerated earlier. That, of course, we were all coming from the same constituencies, and then again, we've all had the same upbringing. I've mentioned certain astute individuals who have been very pivotal in our growth. And these people are the very people who train him. So at least I should have some level of confidence that if I'm not there, they should be able to deliver. Mind you, I have always not been, by all means, it needs to be me. For me, it is about people who have, you know, that um, sort of heart, you know, who are very considerate, that indeed when they are given the opportunity, they will serve. So even when I was running for my SRC election back in Ken
Ken
Wesley,
USD.
it will astound you to know, my brother, that I could campaign and campaign for my opponents, because those times, trust me, I believed so much in the abilities of some of the candidates that we're running with. The likes of Lenin, Anane, AJ, Nicholas, you have, DNA and some other people. And I have worked with these guys, and I knew that they could equally deliver. So when I go to classes to address them, in canvassing for votes or getting people to believe in my vision, I still made options, to the people, and said that even if I don't win this election and any of these guys wins, I believe students will still fall in good hands. And so it has not been a do or die affair for me. It is about having people who would be responsive when it comes to the issues, the plight that confront us as a people. So yes, it is quite imperative or prudent that we also consider what they were also bringing on board, knowing clearly, without mentioning words, where we were all coming from and the upbringing that we all had
Okay.
had. Yeah.
Sure, then this brings me to, you said it's not a do or die.
Yeah.
You believe in the abilities of these same people because you've been trained from one system.
Yeah.
A bird whispered to me
Yeah.
that Alvin, who you've known closely from your KNUST days,
Yeah.
who is an opponent now because he's also aspiring for the same office,
Okay.
has stepped down on several occasions, at least 2 times for you.
Okay.
And even before you came out to contest this year's election, he came to you, he had a conversation with you, and you gave him the nod, only for him to see that at a later date, you are also contesting for the same elections. What do you say about this, or how true is this?
Well, I let me be very clear and emphatic and very categorical or explicit,
Okay.
on this situation. It is non-existent. I mean, for what you've mentioned, it is never existing in the first place. You see, in the first place, I first approached him and told him I was running for next president, because of course I had already initiated the conversations way back last year. And so he has not been in our space. Recently he's been doing entertainment,
Okay.
being MCs for events, clubs, and things like that. So outrightly he's been out of the student space or anything politics and we know he's channeling a new path that has to do with entertainment. And yes, of course, that is what he wants to do, and we all are supporting him for that. And so I least expected that going to a brother to inform him about my ambitions, he would have a counter, opinion, and of course a counter ambition to it. So once he mentioned he was also running, I left it as such. He never came to me to tell me he's running for Nooks. It is me who rather approached him, as brotherhood would have it, because of course we've had a number of things, doing in previous years. You recall that is his major student position that he has held. That would be a PRO for College of Art and Social Sciences, now College of Humanities and Social Sciences. That was given under my administration when I was serving as the college vice president.
Okay. So
yes.
You gave him a role.
Yes, please. And it again needs to also be stated that he's my junior. Okay. So I ran college ahead of him.
Okay.
As of the time he even at a point wanted to run for SLC, which didn't materialize, I was serving already as Kano State SLC vice president.
Okay.
So it beats the odds of logic for anybody to think that he has stepped down for me. I mean, I did my national service ahead of him.
Okay.
So at what point did we even, meet to even contest for a position, except for Nooks?
Okay.
So yes, of course, it is non-existent. There has never been any point where he had to step down for me or anything. I mean, if we are going to have a very honest conversation, it has been me who have, to an extent contributed to his growth by even affording him a role in my administration as college vice president.
Okay.
And well, I would want to leave things to rest, but of course, I think that we need to be as much as possible, circumspective when it comes to some of these conversations, competitiveness and all of that. And I want to restrain. I want to be decorum, when it comes to some of these events, so that of course we do not trigger certain sensitive buttons and all of that. But I think what needs to be on record is that there hasn't been any point where we even clashed on any position.
Not even when you were going for SRC?
No. I was already serving as Ken West SRC vice president before he
but
even
he could have contested for president that same year.
Well, I don't know, but there has never been any conversation like that. For the people we contested, I think about 17 or 16 people. He never was part of it.
He never showed up.
You get it. And in my college level too, it was a no.
Okay.
Do you get it? So there has never been, that environment where we even have to compete on anything. And again, with the Nooks conversation too, honestly, he had not come to me. It's for me, it was weird when I saw him, at a certain Nooks event. I thought that he came to probably MC or do his entertainment bit thing. And I think it was then when I mentioned to him, and I think further I texted him and told him about my ambition of running for the union's president. It was during that period when he had a counter, opinion or a counter interest that of course he also wanted to run. And if you're a believer in democratic principles and tenets, you know that of course competition is one of the core principles, and so we needed to allow it, except to say that this needs to be a competition that is very hygienic, that do not defame people, that do not destroy people, so that of course when you are done with all of these things, when I mentioned earlier that politics is about conflict and cooperation, I spoke about the conflict part of it, but then of course the cooperation part is when we are done with all of these things, we should be able to sit on the round table and have an appreciation of a center policy where we run with, regardless of who wins the election. So it should be very hygienic and very healthy. and that is what we are rooting for in this election.
Okay, so do you think the ARSRC has, because it has human resource, it has people who are sharp and who, have that edge for leadership. So do you think the ARSRC has failed, in regulating, that part? Because this election alone, they are sending 3 people out there to compete against each other. Do you think it's hygienic? Do you think it's healthy? Have you agreed on? Because of course, you had an agreement with KOD. You thought, oh, we are from the same caucus or the same constituency. Okay, we are from the same place, so I can step down for you. So how come this conversation wasn't had when you had Alvin and you had Mabel Obeying in the same contest?
Well, so like I mentioned earlier, I had already engaged leadership of APEC,
Okay.
and for most of them last year when we were going into the election, I had engaged them. When I had to reconsider my disposition on it, I re-engaged them. So one would think that when interests, comes in like this, they are probably going to have conversations around the Georgia, and maybe, for those who are coming in, probably have a conversation with them, have a clear plan, so that maybe we allow this person run, and then in the subsequent year we would have the others run. I had followed the union for well over 10 years. It will marvel you. But I'm not contesting for president. There isn't a timeline for when anybody is due to contest for Nook's president. We have that leverage. We all are very young people, and the opportunity is there for all of us. However, we do not all not think in the same direction.
Sure.
And so we need to appreciate the fact that, in as much as, of course, you understood certain events and understood that, yes, let me consider one or two. Not everybody will provide considerations to some of these events or some of these developments, and so we should appreciate it in that level. It is not in any way to substantiate that leadership has failed or the leadership of our association has failed. Not at all. We are grooming people to take up leadership position. Soon we are going to have a transitional leadership, and I mean, it is one of those things that we have groomed people to take up these mantles, and people have expressed their interest. This is what we all have been trained to become. Except to say that, of course, if care is not taken, and of course you have other people also coming from elsewhere, then you may lose it outright.
Your votes might be divided.
You get it. You may lose it outright. So this calls for a roundtable conversation, or probably a policy direction, or we need to regulate it somehow. But it is not a failure on administration when people have been trained and they express the same interest in something. It is because everybody believes in his or capabilities and believe that this is the right time for me to give whatever is in me to Ghanaian students. So yes, of course, on a fair ground, I must say that leadership hasn't failed, but then it is something that we needed to look at, so that, of course, in generations or transgenerations to come, they wouldn't have to suffer the same fate. Maybe there could be a timeline, a guide, something that's sort of protect us from heading towards dungeon, because there is a possibility that, of course, you may lose it outright. And so and I must commend leadership that I think they have been quite proactive about it. As soon as this came up, they came up and then have tried to put up something together. I think it is very laudable. They've had a series of conversations with us. I have always said that we should be able to go into this election with a clear-cut understanding and appreciation of issues, so that when we are coming back, or when all is said and done, nobody goes home with bruises, or nobody goes home so hurt and pain that we are not able to heal, which ultimately may affect our prospective future.
So how true is this statement? If you make a political enemy, you've made the enemy forever. How true is this statement?
Well, it is true to some people, but sincerely, I disassociate and I hold strong counteractive opinion to it. I disagree. People are not supporting you today, not because you are not competent or because your vision is archaic or it's not valid, but it is because at certain point people choose what they would want to believe in. People build their convictions around issues, and so for a certain period people have built their personal convictions around the vision or the ambitions of some people. Afford them that opportunity.
Yeah.
When you are given the opportunity, prove to them that indeed this was the plan. This is what we needed to believe in. This is the direction we're supposed to go. And so when people build qualms along the line and say that, okay, so because this person didn't support me because of that and that, you become my political enemy, and it goes into the future. For me, it is wrong, especially for young people. I have always argued this with Abraham Maslow's theory of needs.
Okay.
That's you would have needs, you have shelter, you have security, and all of that. But I want to put premium on self-actualization and
Is it self-esteem?
self-esteem. So you realize that people get to self-esteem and they want to actualize. But trust me, when people have actualized, they even though they've actualized, but they still want to do more. So in the conclusions of this theory, then Abraham Maslow says that human needs are insatiable. So you realize that, and it gives you a clear appreciation of what the paradigm of leadership is about. And so ultimately, there is that room for everybody to serve. So at some point the person didn't support you in SLC, but because we are ambitious and we keep hunting, there is a time you're going to contest for nukes, and at this time the person will be a believer of your vision. And best believe this time, when they are even coming to support you, they may even be well equipped and may support you not just with their energies but with other resources.
Sure.
So yes, even if they don't support you in nukes, there could be a possibility when you are running for MP or something, or there could be a place where they would need to make recommendations so that you are put there as a CEO, and
Sure.
they'll do those recommendations. So yes, I don't believe in outright political enemy, being permanent. I think that we need to revise this principle so that, of course, we don't become too sentimental.
Okay, so let's break the heat. Let's break the heat. So I would want to mention some past presidents, and you actually tell me the first word that comes to mind when you mention them.
Okay.
So randomly, jihad from nukes.
A direction of our union and
Direction.
reshaping of our union.
Okay.
Yeah.
YB.
YB, an an individual who is so bent on results than rhetorics.
Okay. Dennis Apialabi.
Chief advocate.
Okay. KOD.
KOD, a man who has so much resilience and has greater commitment to the task given him.
Okay, so let's go to these presidents who have also led Ghana. Dr. Kwame Nkrumah.
A revolutionist.
Okay. Akufo-Addo.
The educationist.
John Dramani Mahama.
The infrastructural man.
Okay. John Ajekum Kufuor.
The excellent leader.
Okay. What about Jerry John Rawlings?
Well, a Republican god.
A Republican god. Okay, so on that note, I'd like to move to you being an assembly member. What
sir.
motivated you to enter that space of politics? Because with that, you need larger resources. That is quite different from, manning the affairs of students. That is like, you dealing with everybody or the fiber of your society, and it's just not a section of society. That is like a whole community, and that is like mainstream politics or mainstream service. So, what led you to that part?
Okay, so for me, galvanizing all the experiences in student leadership, leading the almost 100,000 or over 100,000 students in Ken West, as SRC vice president, looking back at college, vice president, course rep, dealing with intellectual community, varying people with numerous opinions and approach to issues. I felt that, of course, I was well prepared, and we all come from somewhere.
Yeah.
We all belong to certain factions, we belong to certain families. And so I look back at North Central and I realized that that is where I had my upbringing, and the community in general contributed to what I am today. And so if I've had this knowledge, then of course it was incumbent and pressing on me to, as part of my social corporate responsibility, give back to society. And so I decided not to run to Accra, to explore certain political opportunities and all that. I said, no, let me go back home and serve my people with the leadership experiences that I've had. I was so bent in making sure that, of course, we will be able to groom a number of young people who would take over when we are not in the scene. And so I had to commit greatly, to the course of education. So proud to me, even contesting for assembly member, I had already instituted what we call Center for Youth Development, and that had to look into education, and that is where we carved education seminar and subsequently AGRIPAH's community mock and all of that. So primarily my motivation for going into it, for me, was to satisfy that social corporate responsibility burden that I had, knowing very well the contribution the community or the society has contributed to my personality.
Okay, so how different is that kind of politics, or that side of politics? How different is business around that from student leadership? What is the difference?
Okay, so well, with student leadership, you are dealing with a very strong intellectual community. Everybody owns an opinion. Everybody has approach and theories to issues and all of that. And in the community too, you have people who, yes, of course, in the same vein, have different approach to issues, but sometimes, of course, understanding to some issues.
So now you can make yourself.
Well, thank you very much.
If you need that too.
Thank you very much. It's fine.
It's fine.
Yes.
This is just fruit juice, so.
Oh really?
It's just fruit juice, but
okay.
it's creamy, but it's a low alcoholic. But
then
the percentage is very minimal. It's just like, let's say, is it Smirnoff Ice or something?
Yeah,
it's
that's
like
fine. If I take 0.5 self, Charlie, if you continue this interview.
But you need a level of alcohol. Everybody needs a level of alcohol.
Well, Kenke gives me that.
But with this, actually, I've prayed over it. So right now, I think it's lost all the effects of its alcoholic content.
Well, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar.
Okay. Then there is Coke. There is Coke, actually.
Certainly.
Okay,
I will
Coke,
do Coke. I will do Coke. Thank you very much. Well, it is not in any way to, make a case against people who appreciate alcohol. It's just a personal decision.
Okay.
It's just a personal decision.
Well, that's all right. But because when I was a little bit younger, my mom told me anything with alcohol written on it is bad. It can spoil your life and all of that. So I read this Bible story and I realized that the first miracle Jesus did was turning water to wine. So I'm like, wow, if Jesus was able to do this, and he created us in the image and likeness of God, that means I can also reverse engineer this. So anytime I pick it and I touch it and I pray over it, I just reverse engineer it and take all the alcohol out. So right now, I blessed you as fruit juice.
That is a semantic, but then
there's also cube. So if you'd love to help yourself.
Yeah.
So how is the North Central constituency like? Are they elites? Because you are speaking of students who are elites, who are into academia, manning their affairs and manning not, how is like, what are the demographics like?
Yeah, okay, so it has a blend of both. Earlier I was enumerating that the clear disparity has to do with one being a clear and strict intellectual community,
Yeah.
where the other seemingly have different appreciation to issues. So this is what I mean by that. So there are people who cannot read in a society or in the community, and so once people go to them and propagate to them, this is it,
Yeah.
they take it as it is. They do not verify, they do not cross check, they do not check and all of that. Unlike in an intellectual community where you're going to level a case or a propaganda against, yes, sometimes it's still true, but sometimes people who really wants to know the truth are able to assimilate and of course embark on further research, to ascertain what actually the reality or the truth is about. But in the community, you get people who rolling with almost everything and consuming every information. Sometimes they assimilate without cross-checking, without double checking and all of that. And sometimes it is worrying. And so over and over, of course, you need to play that card of being a modest leader, being an educator, getting people to appreciate issues. And it is what makes it beautiful. It tells you how society has been over the years, and how, of course, we all have a responsibility in making sure that we reshape it. Those times, of course, when a letter comes, we would have to go and wait for a certain Ebusian Krachi to come and read for us. But now almost every family seems to have a certain student who is at least in JHS, who is able to read and probably understand certain basic writings or basic issues. So the clear cut disparity is how we appreciate issues and how we consume information. Yes. Then again, you would also ask how how we are appreciating
Yeah.
how we are appreciating.
I think you've answered my
Yeah, I've
question
answered.
on,
Okay, that is fine.
so this is what I want to know. What would you say is your landmark achievement, as an assembly member?
I Well, as an assembly
Because
member.
before you answer, because I realized, I talked to certain people in your constituency when, I posted this interview. Everybody was talking about how, much of a stand-up guy you are, how they think you are smart, you are nice, and all of that. Because, but that's my assembly member. I'm like, okay, let me inquire. Okay, so this is your second term. So what is your landmark project? Why do the people love you?
Okay, so I think that I've, as much as possible, touched on almost all the underpinnings that make society better. So you need to look at water, getting potable water for your people. Yes, of course, North Interest is an estate where almost every house have a pipe borne water.
Yeah.
But beyond that, there are some fluctual situations that gets us not to have water.
Yeah.
And so what I have done is that I've led conversations where we've been able to institute 4 mechanized boreholes.
Okay.
And they've been dispersed, in terms of proximity. The community is quite parted.
Yeah.
And so I make sure that every parted, part of North Central has one close, so that in terms of proximity, when there is a water shortage, people are able to access it. So when it comes to water, that is what we have done, or potable water, that is what we have done. When it comes to health, I have also made sure that, of course, I've organized a number of them. Free health insurance registration. I mean, being card renewal, card replacement, new cards, and all of that for kids, for aged, for every individual who needs it, regardless of the age setting.
Yeah.
And again, when it comes to health, I've also made sure that intermittently I organize health screening. And of course, most of the time I'll bring people who have expectants and machines so that it is able to assess your whole body, and determine what actually is wrong with
No,
you.
that's
And
for
of
health.
course, yes, for health. So beyond that, of course, when it comes to education too, we've had we've distributed a number of school uniforms to students who have no school uniforms, and those who have school uniforms but are tattered. We've also distributed learning materials. Usually when I'm out of the country or I travel to the UK, I partner with some agents, and then we bring books, to some of these schools. And again, we've also instituted what we call AGRIPAH's community mock, where before students go to sit for their BEC, we organize mock that is called AGRIPAH's community. This is solely sponsored by me. And of course, for all the schools within my electoral area, they set for this exam, just to augment the efforts that teachers already are putting in. And for me, it is to identify their strength and their weaknesses, so that we are able to address these weaknesses and strength in education seminar. So I have another instituted program also called education seminar, and that is where we teach students the techniques and technicalities in answering examination questions.
Yeah.
And it is also the same environment where I distribute to each and every student in Ops interest setting for BEC a brand new mathematical set.
Yeah.
And for that, my inspiration is that I remember when I was writing BEC, unfortunately, I asked a friend for a protractor, and I was misconstrued or misinterpreted to be asking for question, to be asking for answers. And my paper was written on, and mind you, I'm a math phobia. Unfortunately, it was mathematics, so they wrote on my paper. How I managed to pass that paper, it is only God who knows that. But you see, not everybody would be as lucky as myself. And again, we should also appreciate that examination more practices and regulations around that has far advanced, and so you may experience cancellation of your paper and all of that. So for me, I have always argued that for the issues and the difficulties we have gone through, generations or trans generations coming should not go through the same issues. And so that is my inspiration for making sure that each and every student who set for exam at least would have his or her brand new master, so that you don't have to go through my own exigency. The point is that, I mean, it looks like it's a spirit. You would have a master, but until it is a brand new that you are taking to write your BC, the old one you have certainly would not have the long pencil in it, or the short pencil, or a divider or something. I don't know if it is spiritual or something. A master do not, once it is opened by a student, do not have the full set. But I believe that, of course, sitting for your first external examination, at least once we make provision for you, get you a brand new master, you are focused and you do not have to face any qualms or any difficulty, unlike I faced when I was writing my BC.
That is very commendable. So what do the people of your electoral area think about the new position you are going for? Because you've done so much for them, you are committed to them, you are doing a lot for them. You've stated a lot of the achievement, a lot of what you've done for them. So what do they think about you running for NUC's president?